In Canada, Rebel News shows us that the freedom of the press may no longer exist.
Why is your government supporting Islamo-nationalism? What? Excuse me. What are you doing?
You're under arrest for assault.
What, sir?
Why are you pushing me? You're under arrest for assault.
Who are you?
You're under arrest for assault.
Officer, take your hand out. Why am I under arrest? I'm just doing my job. Resist. Welcome to Black Faces Canada. This is what they do to journalists. I was merely scrumming Minister Freeland, and a RCMP officer blocked me, and evidently this is now a trumped-up charge of assault, folks.
So when Canadian cops aren't busy copying LeBron's flop to the few that still serve their country's population, apparently they're out there warning Canadians, we may not stop the criminals, but we can stop you from noticing the criminals.
You cannot post the images yourself because you have to remember that in Canada we have a presumption of innocence, and posting that picture could be a violation of private life.
Instead, he says if anything is stolen, call 911.
And the sad thing is this seems to be a reoccurring theme for Canadian coppers. People protesting against what they feel are unlawful lockdowns and medical requirements expect to be trampled by the cavalry for tyranny. But protest on behalf of foreign forces that still may be holding Canadians captive expect to be resupplied by their police with warm coffee. So I admit, I've never personally been to Canada, but I do have a few friends from Montreal that do nothing but rave about how amazing their city is. And although I covered the Canadian convoys at length, I never really knew how it concluded until I was a guest on Clyde Do Something's YouTube show to find out that yes, a lot of the mandates went away, but the truckers essentially lost. And only now are we starting to see the long-term effects of Trudeau's tyranny, which will likely extend until at least 2025, when their citizens can finally vote in a Pierre Poilievre. But even me, not having ever been to the country, should be able to see what's happening just north of the border and realize how quickly that could become us in the US. Because if you followed this channel for any period of time, you know I'm a big supporter of law and order, but I still don't blindly back the blue because there's nuance. There's a lot of cops that want to stop crime, and also a lot of cops that just want a paycheck, and even some cops that are outright criminals themselves. But the biggest and more common issue is the cops that will blindly follow orders that they wouldn't want to enforce on their own families, which is what we're seeing in Canada now, but even in places like Oakland, California.
I saw two guys creeping up really quick, so I was like, it's a robbery. They told me don't move or we'll shoot. So I started shooting at them because they had the gun pointed at me. They were shooting back. It was going back and forth for about like 20 seconds.
It all happened at MSM Jewelry near 41st and International at about 10 Monday morning. He says the men then fired about 20 shots at him, one with a .40 caliber handgun with a drum magazine, the other had a 9mm with an extended magazine. These large capacity magazines are illegal. Officers did not cite or arrest the worker.
They said you did the right thing. They said you did everything right. They said, we're just gonna take your guns.
He had this message for the would-be robbers if they do return.
If you come back again, trying to do the same thing, we're just gonna defend ourselves. At this point, you have.
Now, anyone who recognizes these guys...
So let's just unpack a few insane things about this seemingly unrelated, but actually incredibly relevant story, where this law-abiding citizen found himself in a situation where the peace officers were nowhere in sight. And although he was able to protect himself, he only had his 10 rounds readily available versus the robbers' 200 in extended mags. Yeah, they blocked out the employee's face, but still broadcasted the name of his workplace to not only the robbers, but the entire community, that law enforcement temporarily took away his two-way tools. And when the worker went into his warning about, if you come back again, I'll defend myself again, the news outlet immediately cuts him off. It's almost like they don't care about the safety of citizens, they just want to maintain the status quo of you being absolutely dependent on police. So when you have a place like Canada that doesn't necessarily have the same 2A as the US, if you want any semblance of safety from criminals intending you harm, you also have to throw stacks of your tax dollars to the same people that arrest the press for pestering politicians, warning homeowners against noticing the crime, and trampling women with a walker for wanting her freedom. It's that old saying of, just because there's firefighters doesn't mean you shouldn't have a fire extinguisher, especially when they're building a system that only allows their firefighters to extinguish certain non-Prime Minister approved flames. So now we have a problem here, and we should not only know about it, but also vote accordingly. So real quick, I know a lot of you guys ask about my tattoo work, which is all done by one guy, an amazing artist named Derek Taddy on Instagram. So if you want to check out his work and possibly get on his books, I put his link in the description. And if you appreciate my concise, lighthearted commentary on the tragic status that is today's reality, hopefully I've earned your subscription, then go check out my video on how New Yorkers are finally handling the activists when NYPD won't.